Hey everyone, it is late at night and I am Norman. It is time, once again, for some watch news. So let us begin. The first article I have is a review of a Laurent Ferrier watch. And this article comes to us from Monochrome Watches. This is a review of a brilliant watch with an amazing green colored dial and matching green colored strap. It is not a cheap watch, that's for sure. What do I think of this watch? First off, I absolutely love the hands on Laurent Ferrier watches. Their hands are absolutely brilliant. I love how slender they are. They're just sleek and elegant looking. And the color of that green dial is absolutely brilliant. The sub-seconds, which seems slightly oversized, look so perfect on this watch, and the applied indices are just amazing. Also, I love me a micro rotor movement. That is so cool. I feel like there should be more micro rotor movements in the world. Sadly, this watch is about $50,000. That is a hefty price tag. I mean, I'm sure it's worth it, but wow. It'd be great to get handsets like this on more affordable pieces. So far I haven't seen it though. Anytime you find extremely slender hands that are just super elegant, they're usually on really pricey watches. But this watch's design is absolute fire. The next article I have also comes from Monochrome Watches, and this is a review of the Long and Hein Friedrich Remontoir watch. This watch also has amazing looking elegant hands, a hefty price tag of around $60,000, and at the 12 o'clock it has the awesome looking 00 marker. That is so cool. Apparently their first generation of this watch also had that. But inside the movement, it features a remontoir. What in the world is a remontoir? It's a feature or complication or whatever it would be called that enables a movement to be more accurate. So as the mainspring winds down, it loses some of its power because it has less power in reserve, and this can cause a movement to become less accurate as it winds down. So it performs differently when it's fully wound and when it's starting to empty out. A remontoir serves as almost like a second mainspring that's fed by the primary mainspring, so it's always fully wound until the mainspring actually is dead. And this second power reserve is actually what is tied to the escapement. So the watch is basically accurate as though it's fully wound all the time. What do I think of this? That is pretty clever. I love the ingenuity that goes into mechanical watches. Once you read up on them a bit and understand how they work, they're simple and yet not. I mean, this is genius in its simplicity, but imagine coming up with that when there was no such thing as a remontoir to begin with. What an amazing idea. That's super cool. Again, it would be cool to see such a thing in more accessible watches. But yeah, this is an absolutely gorgeous watch. I love how the numeric indices aren't all upright, they radiate out from the center. So if you're looking at the 6 o'clock, it's actually upside down. And the 9 has a cool pop of color. It's red. The white highlights of the sub-seconds are just awesome. The whole thing just looks brilliant. And the handset on this thing rivals that of a Laurent Ferrier. The sub-seconds hand is pretty fun too, and there's some applied markers around that sub-second style. I mean, this watch is just absolutely amazing. I suppose it better be for that price tag. The next article I have comes from Fratello Watches, and this is a piece discussing design first when it comes to watches. And I love how the author says the quiet thing out loud. He talks about looking at watches on other people's wrists, slyly, and how those watches might say something about the person wearing it. I too do this all the time. I'm constantly staring at people's wrists. If I'm watching movies or TV, if I notice a watch, that's pretty much all I see as I'm watching it. And I do often wonder what a watch says about people. You see the person wearing a gigantic Invicta on their wrist, or the lady wearing a 42mm dive watch, or the guy in completely casual clothes but he's wearing a Cartier dress watch. And then the author goes on to discuss putting design first. And again, I can absolutely relate to this. I sometimes feel kind of shallow because it's always the appearance of watches that really get me. I love the inner workings, I love mechanical watches, but ultimately it's how the watch looks that's going to be the deciding factor, because that's what I see every time I glance down at my wrist. And if a watch just looks lame, does it really matter that there's a Remontoir hiding beneath that dial? So I completely agree with this author, and I absolutely relate to everything that he said in this article. Next up, we have another review from Monochrome Watches, and this is on a trio of Merci watches. I see this brand here and there, and every time I do, I'm amazed at how brilliant their watches look. They have such a great minimalist, dressy aesthetic to them. They're just gorgeous. The watches in this article are a trio of white dial watches. 2 of them have sector dials, which I'm a sucker for. One of those 2 watches merely has a 12 o'clock indice. Other than that, it's just the sectors for the minutes and the hours all around the edge of the dial. It has amazing looking Delphine hands as well. The second sector dial watch has numerals for 12, 3, 6, and 9. It has pencil hands, and the seconds hand is a super thin little needle-like hand that looks just amazing on it. And the last of the trio might actually be my favorite, even though I love sector dials so much, but this watch has just dot indices, and around the very edge of the dial are really tiny minutes called out. There are hour markers just for the 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock on this watch. The hands are pencil hands that are blued, but the seconds hand, which is a needle hand, is done in silver, which looks just gorgeous. The cases on these watches are really sleek. There's drilled lugs on them. They're kind of a sporty, everyday wear, yet dressy looking aesthetic. I absolutely love the design language of Merci watches. I haven't had a chance to see one in person, so who knows what I would think actually seeing one in the metal, but in pictures, these watches are just brilliant. If any of you out there own a Merci watch or have seen one in person, let me know what you think about it in the comments. And the last article I have is yet another Monochrome Watches article. This is a review of a Felipe Piculic. That brand is new to me. This is a moon phase watch with a 3-dimensional moon between the 10 and 11 o'clock positions. It also has an open heart section positioned just below the moon. What do I think of this watch? I love the gray color of the dial with the black band around the edge of it. That looks so cool. The case is sleek, dressy, and elegant. I like the 3-dimensional moon and how they positioned it in such a unique place. I'm not a fan of open heart dials though. However, the unique placement of this open heart complication and the shape of the window, it's really odd. It's cut out to completely contour with the wheels that are visible through it. It just looks really good actually. I feel like open hearts generally look out of place on a dial, but in this watch, it's almost like it's skeletonized but not, just because of the way they did this. Even though these 2 complications add some complexity to this watch, the overall impression of it is very minimal. And I suppose it's a bit more affordable than the other pieces that Monochrome reviewed that we discussed. This one comes in at around $24,000. So I won't be getting one. I feel like in general, moon phase complications aren't so useful, but they are intriguing when they're done in 3 dimensions. So there you have it, some of the things that are happening in the watch world today. Thanks for watching.